in the first video, the method, we created the results that contain countries and the population and seas and the depth to analyze if there is a correlation between population and the adjacent seas. Now let's assume that now we want to add more data to the mix. To find perhaps there are some other parameters and aspects that affect the population. For example, the number of airports. So there is a site that contains the airport data. It's a CSV data source where we have the columns of airport names and some other data, latitude, the airport type, and there is also the column ISO country, which contains the country code to the country that airport belongs to. So if we open this country CSV file, then this is the linking table that contains the country code and country names. Now the challenge is, how do we integrate and migrate the airport data source with our existing data, where we also have countries, and those countries have its own coding. So first thing we do, we go to extract page, and we use this one go quick extract and load and choose the country CSV, and to give the name to the row, so the items in the table, and that becomes a class name. And then we press extract. Next, we choose the airport CSV file that contains 45,000 rows, and we give each row the name of airport, which becomes a class name, and we'll do the extract and load. So now let's go to explore page and let's check how many country IDs we have now loaded. So we got 247 countries IDs. And let's also check how many airports we have now in our system. And it is 45,000. But let's also check how many countries we had previously from the Mondial data source. And that is 238 countries. So the new data source brought us 9 more countries than the old. If we browse in a linked data browser and navigate to the Mondial countries and to the new country IDs, then you see that both instances now have a code attribute and a name attribute. And let's generate the query out of this map, where we will check how many countries we have where both code and name totally match. So the query has 2 filters here on the name and the code. When you run this, it shows that only 65 countries have total match. So next, let's filter out the name filter and see how many countries there are where the code is matching. It tells us that there are 76 countries, which also suggests us that the coding systems are not compatible. And then even in this list where the code matches, we find that some codes just mean different countries. For example, the ES means Spain in a new source and El Salvador in the old one. So if we go back and switch the filters and find how many countries do we have where name is matching, because that seems to be more reliable, then you see that we have 221 rows. And as we base our final result set of country population analysis on the Mondial database, so we have 238 countries there, so we are missing 17 countries from our results. Going back to our editor, core editor, we change the code a little bit to find out what countries are those where the code is matching but name does not. So that would give us some of the countries that is left out from 238 minus 217. And we have an 11 here, and most of those, it shows that the codes match but names do not, and that's why that a different coding system. But we also find two of those where actually the code match and name also matches, but the name is spelled a little bit differently. So we have Cote d'Ivoire and we have Peru. And now let's go back and look, modify the code a little bit and find the countries where nothing matches. Not codes, not names. So running this tells us we have 14 countries like this. And among those we have Kazakhstan, which is quite big country, and then Congo. And now among those we need to then probably, there's no other way really, that manually map the country IDs to the mondial country IDs. But there's 14 of those. So perhaps we should find out how significant are those countries for the analysis we want to do. And we write this query where we are looking into the new data source and the country IDs and all airports that those countries map to, and we just leave out those non-matching countries from mondial database, and we will group also and find a number of airports for each country. And that suggests us that we have the Kazakhstan, which is relevant, and then also have a Congo, which we have actually two Congos here, and maybe Antarctica and the South Sudan, which perhaps are relevant countries to get into the analysis. But the others who having 1, 2 airports probably would not affect the outcome of the analysis which we want to do. So this query gives us information. Is it worth to put the effort, and how much is it worth, and how much effort to put to try to migrate and integrate two data sources with incompatible coding systems? So we find some kind of a middle path, and we write the code to map countries and airports, the mondial countries to the airports from a new source, where we have in the mapping condition is that we map everything where a name maps, and we also map then selectively the codes. For the code is the CI, what was Cote d'Ivoire and the Peru, and we take a Kazakhstan. When we run this, we are getting a pairs of countries and the airports. And as we saw in the first video, we can turn this query of mapping into a rule, and we can define a new attribute. So we're doing some design of semantics. To modify this rule and saying that under these circumstances we want to create new facts that the countries and airports are related to. And we run this to test it. And when we verify that our rule is correct, go to transform phase, and we perform this entailment and the materialization of these facts into the database. So going back now to the Explore, we should have now all the data entailed and available. So let's go back and start creating our navigation map for query generation, and do again this starting from Sweden. And now we see we have a list of airports nicely. You click on this. Right, so the country has a name which we use also as a key, and the airport has name, and we can take all other attributes into the analysis. Right, from this navigation map we can go to explore and generate the query. Yeah, we change the select variable name, so we get the country name with the naming convention, and we get the airport name and airport type and longitude, latitude. And let's visualize a query to check. Yes, we have these columns. Run for test. And we also wanted to have a population, so we add a population here. After the country name, population. Let's remove the limit. Visualize population. And run it. We have now aggregated 2 data sources and created a unified, integrated, migrated, cleaned result set.